Call to order this regular council meeting for the city of Albion, 21st of January. I'd ask that all folks present on council and in the gallery please either turn off or silence your phones. And since I was the offending culprit last meeting, my phone is silenced. Please join me in a moment of silence. Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Okay. Mr. Mingo, if you would call the roll.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Reed. Smith.
Here.
Lawler.
Here.
Spicer.
Here.
Williamson.
Here.
And Mayor Atkinson.
Here. Again, remind my colleagues, let's make sure we speak into the mics for the folks watching at home. First order of business, approval of the agenda. I have two changes. Councilman Williamson, did you have a change? Oh, I'm sorry, misread. So the first change is to add a proclamation to recognize the Harrington Elementary Martin Luther King Essay Award winners. So that's one change. The other change is, we had a request that under individual, items for individual discussion, item E be moved up to the first item. Mr. Freeze is not feeling very well this evening and wants to be here to answer any questions, but, so may I have a motion? Yes, Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that we redress the Sidewalk Advisory Committee that was approved by council before the actual attention comes to it at item H. So,
that's cafe.
So you want to do what?
I'd like to discuss it because council approved that a Sidewalk Advisory Committee, and I would like to readdress that before we actually approve or assign individuals to that committee.
Okay, so it's on here for discussion and approval, yes.
So, yes, I'd like to address it before we do any approval. I think, don't we have an approval on here, right?
Yep, C.
Well, you don't have all your people yet.
Request approval.
It's approval, yeah, I'd like to discuss it before it's approved.
So it is for discussion and then approval.
It says, no, it just says approval. It doesn't say anything about discussion.
Right.
I'm looking at the wrong item. Wait a minute.
It says number C.
C.
It's number
C.
It doesn't
C.
say, is there a discussion
Okay.
word?
Okay, unless there's an objection, we will insert the word discussion,
Okay,
slant, approval.
thank you. Thank you.
No problem. You're very welcome. Other changes, Councilman Smith?
Just a point of clarification. Item D shows request approval for a 2020 fee schedule. I had requested that be put on the agenda, but when I made the request, it was actually a request to readdress and discuss. I did not throw approval into my request. I have no problem if that's what we have to do. Just want to make that clear.
Well, then we'll make the same change to its discussion, slant, approval, and then we can discuss it, and then if the will of council is to table it, we'll do that if we want to go forward and vote on it, or not to approve it. Okay? Any other changes? Okay, so the agenda with the following modifications. May I have a motion to approve the agenda with the following modifications to add a presentation for proclamation of Harrington Essay Award winners for Martin Luther King, to change the sequence under items, individual items for discussion. Item E will become new item A, to revise the two items on the agenda, item C and item D, to modify those to discuss and approve.
So moved.
Okay, is there support?
Support.
Okay. Is there further No, we don't need further discussion. All those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Thank you. Okay. All right, so the first item is, under presentations, creating a downtown Oprah district. Amy Dupree's president of Albion Economic Development Corporation.
So, good evening.
Good evening.
Hello. So thank you for rearranging the schedule. I've got a horrible migraine coming on, so I'd like to get home before it gets too much worse. The first item that I'm here to talk about is the Obsolete Property Rehabilitation Act, and this is something that the city, both interim city manager Scott Kipp and Haley and a group of the EDC people have talked about for quite some time, and then when Darwin came on board, we've been talking about it also. So tonight's presentation is to kind of update you on what that act does and give you some examples of how it would be beneficial for our community. So in your packet, you got a lot of information that I wasn't positive you were supposed to get. I think we were still working out some of that, but it gave you a ton of information. So I'm going to simplify it down into this presentation, and then I'll be able to answer any questions that you might have. But the Obsolete Property Rehabilitation Act, let's see if I can make this work, or is Jill going to make it work? Jill is, thank you. It's an act that was put into legislation to allow communities to encourage redevelopment. The community has to be a qualified local unit of government. Albion, luckily, is a qualified local unit of government, if that's not a statement. Those are any core communities as defined by legislation or distressed communities as defined by the legislation. So Albion is included in that, and as such, we are able to use this unique tool. In addition to that, the community has to enact or establish an Oprah district. A district, if you remember a while ago, we talked about industrial development districts and getting tax abatements. Same thing, before they can apply for a tax abatement, which is an incentive on their taxes, we had to define the district. And Oprah is a tax incentive for commercial and mixed-use development, where industrial development is the property tax abatement is strictly for industrial. Projects have to include obsolete property and result in either commercial or mixed-use development. This is not a tool that can be used for strictly housing. It has to be commercial or mixed use. So the way it works is if you define a district, it basically allows projects to come forward and ask for exemptions for up to 12 years. That exemption would be to freeze the existing taxable value on that property. By freezing the taxable value, it frees up cash to be used in the project. So last meeting, we talked about 8 big Albion Plan projects that were requiring tax increment financing, the state to come in pretty heavy. Those will all be applying for an Oprah. This is a tool that can be layered when the pro forma doesn't perform on its own. So when we do these kinds of projects that are challenging, we don't expect to get out of them the cash flow that's needed to make them sustainable, which is why this tool and other tools are available to communities to use. So why would you want to consider this? Well, it encourages redevelopment of your most challenged sites. They can be blighted, functionally obsolete, contaminated, sounds familiar, just like brownfield. So you often see these used together. It is reserved only for those core communities and distressed communities. So the most challenged communities have an additional tool to use to make these projects work. And it adds another tool to the toolbox that we can make projects sustainable. This act sunsetted back in, I think it was 2009, and it was extended by the legislature. It now sunsets in 2026. So that means if you do decide to do a district, and projects come forth within that district, they can be approved for exemptions up until 2026. After that, unless the legislature decides to extend it again, it'll be no longer available. So it's a limited tool that we can use. So step one is for the community to really take a proactive approach and define the district. This isn't required. We could do it project by project, and in that case, it would be just similar to American Colloy that came in recently for the tax abatement. We would define the district and approve the tax abatement at the same time or at two separate meetings. So we could do it that way. The way, if we proactively define it, it kind of fits with everything else we're doing. That RRC certification that's taken us so long, the zoning that we just rewrote. All of that says Albion is open for redevelopment, and we're willing to use the tools needed to make these projects cash flow to a sustainable amount, so they'll happen. Now, if a project is outside of the proposed boundaries, and those boundaries aren't hardcore, I mean, those are what I think is a good boundary for the downtown area, but happy to take your feedback on that. It doesn't restrict it, like I said, so they can come in either within the district and not have to create a district, or they can come in and request a district and the exemption. So if a project on Eaton Street comes in or Austin comes in, it doesn't preclude us from doing an Oprah district at that point too. So the proactive approach, I think, is what's needed in Albion, so people out there that are looking at Albion as potential investment opportunities knows that the community is open to every and all tool to make these projects work. And again, I can't go over this enough. It increases our ability to make those challenge projects feasible, because often, we get down to what we have available and the project still doesn't cash flow to an amount that what MEDC or the bank consider sustainable. Next slide, please. So after that, projects would come in on their own. By defining the district, you're not saying every building in there all of a sudden freezes their taxes. It just gives them the opportunity to come in and say, we have a project, this is what it is, and we need this tool to make it work. I would highly encourage some policy around it. The first one that I say is what I affectionately call the but for. That's from the state days when we used to do mega tax credits. But for that incentive, that job or that investment wouldn't happen here in Michigan. So it's kind of putting the onus on the developer to say why it's needed and show there's financial need. So it's not a pick cart of every tool that you can use. You still need to demonstrate that there's an absolute need. And the other thing is we could put some sort of aggregate benefit into that policy. So maybe it's at least 10% of the current value of the property has to be what the new investment's going to be to limit, people coming in for small investment opportunities. The tool is there and to be used to create redevelopment, to create commercial development, to create jobs, to bring urban cores back to life. So we want to be careful in how it's used, and defining a good policy would make that, much more easy to manage. This is the hard one. So an Oprah, it freezes the local taxes. If a property were to receive an Oprah, they would get 3 tax bills. The way I understand it, I'm not an assessor and I'm not an expert on this, but I've been reading a whole lot. So they would get the land and I can't read that far. The land and the frozen building tax value, and then they would get the full millage that's on the enhancement. So it doesn't necessarily freeze the state portion of this, although you can request 50% of the state be abated for a period of up to 6 years. And they're limited by the number of projects they'll do that for, so the MEDC policy is pretty strict on when they approve that and when they don't. But when that application comes forward to the city, the applicant would mark whether they want the state to consider that reduction also. So in this scenario, you've got a $70,000 property, that's $20,000 of that is land. Land is never abated. And then the building is worth about $50,000. You put that investment in, and in this scenario, it's 2.25, and the assessed value is 1.2. Again, we talked about it last time. If you put $2 million into a building that's only assessed at 1.2, it doesn't make a lot of financial sense. So you got to find the tools that are out there to level that playing field. And what this is really asking for is an annual savings of $44,000. So without the Oprah, the tax bill on this property would be $75,000. With the Oprah, they're saving that 44, and over the course of the 12 years, they're saving $530,000, which is a considerable chunk to add to that cash flow. So this is kind of a complicated example, but it shows you where the benefit is and why we're asking for this. Last slide, please. So I'm asking you to take a look at your community, work with the city manager and the EDC and define what that policy would be, but proactively approve an Oprah district, at least for the downtown. So we're working towards redevelopment in that core. Invite redevelopment. You know, we talked about after RRC was all done to actually, you know, open the doors of Albion and invite developers in to take an opportunity to come here and look at what the opportunities there are and see, you know, where they fit. But partner with developers for sustainable redevelopments. These buildings didn't get where they are overnight. It's going to take a lot longer than overnight to fix them, and we want them fixed for the next 50, 100 years. So that sustainable redevelopment takes a lot of money and resources and time, and in full partnership with the city, the state, and the developer. So that's what we're asking for today, for consideration of bringing back a district for your approval. With that, I'll answer questions if I'm allowed.
Councilwoman Reed?
Would that building down at the end of Albion Street, right before you get to the railroad track, be a building that this could apply to too?
The building at the end of Albion Street,
As you go, right across from where the Malibu was, where Albion Malibu Iron was.
Credit union.
is it a credit union?
Yeah, it used to be.
It was?
First, it was something to do with the Malibu offices or something, and then it turned into a credit union, and
Okay.
now
Possibly.
it's just a mess.
Possibly. So the Oprah takes the place of some of the other tools that are available for industrial. So if it's more of an industrial site, no, we would use the correct tools. This just gives us the ability to use the correct tool. So without knowing the specific site, and I'm really not feeling the best tonight, so I can't even imagine it, it's definitely a possibility.
I'll call you.
Okay,
So,
I'm on jury duty for 2 weeks.
so with the tax increment financing, there are authorized, approved, reimbursable expenses that can be, that those captured tax dollars are used for.
Right.
Is this the same?
No, this is just an abatement of those local taxes. So what it does is free up that cash that you'd be paying for increased taxes to help the cash flow situation while you're waiting for that TIF to come in, while you're trying to make a pro forma with very low incomes in the beginning because your revenues aren't ramped up. Makes sense.
Okay. And this is the downtown area, and then each project that wants to use this as a tool, each developer, each project then applies for it, who reviews it and determines whether or not it's approved?
The city.
Okay. So in reference to Councilwoman Reed's question about a specific building, if the advantage of doing this before there's actually a request to use the tool is to go ahead and designate the area, one advantage is to advertise to developers that we are eager and we want people to come and develop, and we've already taken some steps. Would it make sense, therefore, to create additional areas such on Austin Avenue, Eaton Avenue, to where we have that laid out?
It may. I don't know that it would. So the interesting part is you can do the district and the exemption the same day. You know, we could come in and schedule both public hearings and consideration for both of them at your same council meeting. That can be done. So for projects that we don't know exist, that's probably the better bet, because otherwise we're placing zones around or districts around that may never have action in them. I think by at least doing one district, anyone looking at Albion, whether it's in that district or not, knows that that tool is available for use. and that the city has created a policy and taken the time to educate themselves so that they will consider approving it when it's appropriate. So it's kind of a catch-22. I'm not positive you want to create a district for everyone that's possible. Wouldn't hurt. It just would be, it's more work to do that. And then with the hope that, it's important that we have the tools available. And if it stalled the project, I'd absolutely say yes. But I don't know that it would stall it that much.
Okay. Just we desperately need some development and economic growth in those areas, and anything we can do to communicate that to developers seems like something we should seriously consider. Councilman Smith?
It does raise a lot of questions, a lot of them. Number one, I'm just wondering how this bumps up against what we were presented last time with the TIFA and all that stuff. How does this, does it fold into the deck of cards, or is it on the side and
Nope.
picks up afterwards, or when does this pick up?
No, so the Oprah, when it's approved for the term. So for a brownfield, the ones that you looked at the other day, if you could actually see those schedules, which you had access online, so it's much easier to do it online, you'll see that for the first 12 years, there was very little local capture. It was just the land local capture that the TIF schedules were capturing. That's because we were assuming the Oprahs would be approved. So those Oprahs were already within those plans. If the Oprah had not been within those plans would have been shorter, but they wouldn't have cash flowed to a sustainable amount, and the projects wouldn't have proceeded. So it's already incorporated in those. It actually extends the life of the tax capture tool, the TIF. Does that make sense?
Well, what I'm trying to figure out is on some of the projects we're already looking at 18 years.
It's already included
all
in
the way
that.
up to, so this is included in that?
Yep. If you look at the detail per year, you'll see that the local is zeroed out during those years. So year 13 is when the real local capture starts to go towards the developer. So it's a give and take too, because the developer's not getting a whole lot of increment then for the first 12 years.
I was just trying to figure out how it all folded.
It doesn't add to the 18, no.
I just want to figure out how it all folded together. I knew it did somewhere.
Yeah, definitely.
But if I understood what you just said, if we did this, or didn't do this, then the 18-year TIF would decrease by 6 years?
But I can't give you an exact number because
But
it
it
depends
would
on
go
the
down.
increment, but it would go down.
Okay.
But I will say that that's how we had them structured to begin with, and they didn't perform.
Okay. More questions?
So that's that financial need. It's making sure that we're looking at the pro forma to make sure the tool is needed. You don't want to give it a dollar more than it needs.
Additional questions by council? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, next item is presentation of proclamation to the Harrington Elementary School MLK Junior Essay Contest winners. So we have a variety of essay award winners here this evening, I believe. So if you'll come up to the podium, I'll join you there. And if we can have Ms. Vargo and Ms. Frost to come forward too. A lot of the council members were there at the dinner last night. We got to hear the essays, so I compliment you, right? City of Albion proclamation honoring the Harrington Elementary School MLK Junior Essay Contest winners. Whereas it has been a tradition in Albion over the years to hold an essay contest on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And whereas Principal Robert Giles, in partnership with the former Build Albion AmeriCorps Vista members Cressy Vargo and Marquetta Frost, did hold an essay contest at Harrington Elementary School for 4th and 5th grade students. And whereas the essay submissions were evaluated by the Vista team and Professor Jess Roberts of Albion College and the Big Read. And whereas Jaden Wright, Gabriella Thompson, and Kaylin Bargo were declared the 4th grade winners, and Sophia Williams, Rachel Scott, and Taylor Phillips were declared declared the 5th grade winners of the MLK Junior Essay Contest. And whereas these 6 children read their essays and were presented with certificates of excellence and gift cards from the historic Bone Theater at the Martin Luther King Jr. Community Dinner on Monday, January 20th, 2020. Now therefore, Albion City leadership, Mayor Dave Atchison, council members Vicki Clark, Lynn Reed, Al Smith, Marcola Lawler, Jeanette Spicer, and Shane Williamson, City Manager Garland McCleary, and city staff recognize that the words expressed by these young people serve as a banner of hope for our collective future, and thank them for their dreams and aspirations so eloquently expressed in their winning essays. And witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city to be affixed on this 21st day of January 2020. Congratulations.
Can they read them?
Do you have your essay with you? Would you read it for us? Awesome. All right.
Dr. King was a very kind man. Martin Luther King Jr. grew up in a lot of terrible stuff. When he grew up, African Americans were not able to do anything with Caucasian people. They could not sit at the same lunch tables, go to the same schools, use the same bathrooms, or drink out of the same water fountains, and many more things. In the South, segregation was enforced through Jim Crow laws. They made it illegal for black people to mix with whites, and they policed black behavior. Blacks had to live in different neighborhoods, have different jobs, and talk to whites with the utmost respect. If they tried to fight it, they will risk jail, injury, or even death. There were no rules up north. Sometimes Caucasian people would only sell their houses to other Caucasian people. To do the right things means when someone is being bullied, you should help them by standing up to the bully. Just a simple act like telling them to leave them alone could work. Also, you should do your work if your teacher tells you to. If I saw somebody being treated different and getting bullied, I would be their friend. I just don't like seeing that stuff because it is mean to the person that is getting bullied for how they dress, how they act, and especially because of their race. I would feel bad because they were getting bullied. Dr. King did the right thing when he ran the boycott of the Montgomery bus system when Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat to a white man. On March 7th, 1965, John Lewis and some other marchers were hurt very badly by the police because they were crossing the bridge to go to a different state. Today we call that day Bloody Sunday. All the citizens saw that day on TV and were furious at the violence they saw. Dr. King and some other citizens protested, and Dr. King worked with the president. More than 3,000 people protested and walked more than 54 miles, and the president had the U.S. Army Force protect them. The churches provided food and water to the people. The people also had to sleep in fields to go to sleep at night. Dr. King also had many speeches, but his most famous speech was about jobs and freedom in 1963. In Washington, hundreds of thousands of people gathered in the nation's capital to support civil rights. That was when Dr. King gave his I Have a Dream speech. 2 years after his I Have a Dream speech, his speeches caught the world's attention. Dr. King once said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." I am very glad that Martin Luther King's dream came true, because every race of children can be friends. In fact, I am a different race from some of my friends. Teachers teach about that because he is kind-hearted, amazing, and he believes in everyone. He also believes in God and that one day everyone will get along. Therefore, Dr. King is a very kind and generous man. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is my MLK speech. What I wrote down about MLK and some things that he did and other things that could happen. To do the right thing, you must know how to be kind to others. Some things you can try is just helping a friend up when they fall over. Another example is having fun parties with people that used to bully you, but they're now your friend. If I saw somebody being bullied because of something like their skin tone, dressing, or how nice they were, I would tell them to stop bullying. If the bully didn't stop, I would immediately go get a trusted adult. If the bully turned on me, I would just defend myself and then go get an adult to make sure the harassment stopped. Martin Luther King Jr. handled diversity in many ways. One way is that he didn't go and shoot people. Instead, he peacefully said, this is simply the right thing to do. Martin Luther King Jr. did something that changed the world forever, and I hope his dream lives forever. In conclusion, I think people should respect what Martin Luther King Jr. did to bring peace and joy to the world. In my defense, I think the world became a better place when MLK Jr. was around. I hope people enjoy the things MLK Jr. did. That is all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay. Public comments. Persons addressing the city council shall limit their comments to agenda items only and to no more than 3 minutes. Proper decorum is required. Personal comments about, attacks against, or imputing the motives of council members, city staff members, or members of the public are out of order and not permitted. Are there public comments tonight on agenda items?
Karen Yankee, 104 Irwin Avenue, 3rd Precinct. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I am speaking to agenda item G, solid waste collection contract. I am requesting that the Albion City Council establish a committee composed of Albion precinct or precinct delegates, city manager, and a designated public service representative to have an open dialogue to review the existing Granger contract and to remake recommendations for desired scope of services for solid waste collection. The goal is, my goal, is to bring back fall curbside leaf pickup and to establish an equitable method of payment for senior citizens, snowbirds, etc. And it has also been brought to my attention that numerous Albion citizens would like the return of the annual trash curbside pickup, because it's a holiday. Thank you.
Garrett Brown, 1016 South Superior Street, Albion, Michigan. Just comments on two items. One, I guess the commissions just want to, I know that was postponed from a previous meeting, but just to encourage the council, if it does establish these, to really give a good faith effort to appoint diverse people to this, because I think what ends up happening is the council has commissions to aid it in its work, so that's why we have Plan Commission, EDC, the various boards, but I think what ends up happening is sometimes when the more boards we create, the harder it is for public to be involved in those commissions, because depending on the times that they meet, you know, if there's a situation where something's going on in a board or commission, the public has to attend that and monitor that, and then come monitor at the council. So I think making sure that the meeting times are at times where people can attend and actually participate, and making sure that the appointees are not just the same group of people that we see on all the boards. I know it's a small community, but I think we need to really make an effort to do that. And then also making sure that there's not mission creep, especially in the recreation, because I know there's been discussions about what recreation looks like, if it's a partnership with the Y, or if it's some kind of other formulation, but making sure that the people in that commission doesn't kind of wander over into discussions about the future of that department. And then finally, regarding the Oprah, I had the opportunity, I mentioned this at one of the last EDC meetings that I attended. I was in a meeting recently within the past 2 months, and there was one of the economists from the Upjohn Institute. His name was Timothy Bartik, and his expertise is in incentives and how communities use that. And the core of his presentation was that I think a lot of times communities use these tools but really don't get anything back from them. And so one of the things I would encourage the council to do is to really put a requirement in there to really have some kind of data monitoring to say, okay, if we are giving this money for these long periods of time, these tax breaks, how many jobs are created? Are they local people? So we can monitor that and be accountable to the residents, because what I'll say in the last seconds that I have here is that, you know, me personally, I've never been opposed to rehabilitating the downtown. I know that's a big agenda of the college and its affiliates, but again, the neighborhoods at some point have to become, and I appreciate the mayor and Councilmember Smith for mentioning that, but we have to look at other parts of town because they have actually weathered the storm since our one-state recession in 2001. Thank you.
Are there further public comments on the agenda tonight?
Sonia Brown, 713 Orchard Drive. I am speaking to agenda item under individual discussion A. I shared an email and asked that that email be shared with council. It was an email from June of 2019. It was written by Harry Bonner. So I hope that you all have had a chance to read that email. What I ask is that you all, I'll just read what I wrote. I am concerned that this Recreation Commission will not fairly represent the community at large, and that Mr. Bonner and current director Larry Williams have already had plans for the future structure of the Recreation Department. I'm aware there are conflicting ideas on what recreation in Albion should look like in the future. I fear this commission will be nothing but a political push toward them to tilt the wants of certain citizens over others. I urge the council to continue to allow the city manager to oversee the recreation department. Backdoor plans for recreation have been months in the making, as evidenced by the email that's attached. And now this is an attempt to appear that the input is inclusive. So I hope that you all had a chance again to read the email, to really put some thought into how current decisions can have long-term impacts in the future. And we're seeing that played out in many ways, which I'll be commenting on later after the agenda. So, thank you.
Are there other public comments this evening on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll go into items for individual discussion. And the first item up is request approval of Resolution 2020. Sorry? Oh, thank you. Okay. So consent calendar, approval of consent calendar. First is item A, approval of regular session minutes from January 6th. Approve the study session minutes from January 14, and approval of a $6,555 bill for elevator repairs. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
There should be a correction on item A.
Okay.
It should be recreation instead of parks. I typed parks.
Okay.
So on A, it should say recreation.
Okay.
Commission.
Would you read the roll, please?
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. So, item A. Tell me.
Right there in the regular meeting.
Oh,
I think we looked it up and someone.
okay. All right. So next up is the request approval of Resolution 2020-01, a resolution requesting approving from the U.S. Economic Development Administration to terminate the federal share of the Albion Area Loan Fund. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there support? Support. Okay. Discussion. Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. It was said that there was some type of email that was sent to the council.
That has nothing to do with this item.
Are we talking about the Recreation Advisory
Nope,
Commission?
nope, we're talking about, on your agenda, it shows up as item E, but we resequenced that to item A, so that is what we're discussing, item A.
E?
E?
Okay.
Any questions on this particular item? Okay, so the background on this is, I don't know the length of time that the city and the EDC has had this revolving loan fund. I know with federal funding to it, there are additional requirements and whatnot, and in some cases, restrictions on the loaning of that money. And there are expectations that if you have that fund, that you use it and you loan it. And we've had issues with that happening. Okay, if you have something to add, Mr. Prees, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
You have a lot of information in your packet. I provided a briefing document, and so did the city manager, which, thank you very much, Darwin, that was very helpful. But the end result is this fund within the federal government has come under scrutiny, and a decision that they needed to force community funds that aren't performing to expectation to perform. And the main issue with ours is, one, we've got too much money on hand, so we're not loaning out enough. And then the other side of that is we've got too many write-offs. So when this fund was first established, we had 8 or 9 write-offs out of the 30 loans that we've done. That's not good, because that never goes away. So that default rate that we're carrying forward is going to be held against us forever. And then the other part of that is, obviously, we were lending money that wasn't prudent, and we got into those situations. But now we're following rules. All of the loans have been successful, but we're still not making enough of them, no matter how we interact or market the program. We just did a complete rewrite of the RLF plan and made it more accessible to people, but the credit seems to be the issue. So you still have to have a missing piece of the equation that isn't credit. Credit is a non-negotiable. So maybe if the bank doesn't have enough collateral to make the loan, then we come in and we cover that gap piece. So it can be used in a variety of ways. Right now, the only existing active loan is the brewery, and they're using it as working capital. We've had loans with manufacturing companies that were for fixed assets, and that's kind of been where it's typically housed. In this last rewrite of the RLF plan, we opened it up to more startup operations, commercial operations, to cover some of those startup costs, still holding that credit's got to be good. So there is no way that I see us to loan out the money and get us into balance. Even paying back a portion of the federal doesn't put us back into balance. So if my recommendation, and I believe that's what your city manager recommended also, was termination of the federal share, it would still leave us a healthy revolving loan fund to service the loans for the future. So it's about, and I'm going from memory now because I don't have my glasses on, but it would leave us somewhere around $400,000. Let me look at my last paper. I think it's right around 400. Yeah, we'd be paying back about 290-ish thousand, and we're working with the federal government right now on that exact amount. But that's just basically being held in an account right now because we don't have it on the street earning interest. So it does free up some requirements. One of the requirements is the interest rate that we set isn't always the most competitive. But that's set by legislative statute. So by disengaging from the federal government, we can make it a little bit more flexible for structuring of the loans. I would suggest, I think the city manager suggested looking at the standards and policies. Since we rewrote that RLF plan, it won't be hard to do that, but we can mesh it out for what's federal related, what's not, and what works best for Albion. And then continue to work with our partners in the banking and the financial institutions on how this loan could be used going forward. Does that help?
Councilwoman Clark.
So, I guess my question is, what really happened, or why weren't we able to capture most of that money and use it? Was it lack of knowledge to some of the people in the area, or?
I don't think it's lack of knowledge. I've used it a dozen times. I've pitched it for projects. It's not an attractive tool in certain financial markets, and right now it's just not. So we've used it for attraction, because that could give us a little edge up when we're looking for competing against other communities. But by and large, what those companies have their own financing, and it's not something that they hold any value with. And then the local, the segment that I think it could be very helpful was more as that startup, but that's difficult because prior to this last RLF plan that wasn't allowed. It was very specific to more industrial driven. So opening it up, I hope that we could use it more. We just have to find ways to make sure with startups, credit is always an issue because it's a startup. There's no history there. Right. So find ways to be comfortable with that, and that might mean by partnering with a bank.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Amy, if you could help me a little bit, you're asking that this revolving loan be terminated, and you're saying that the only people that is using this right now is the brewery, so you're asking for the brewery not to pay this money back?
No. So we have right now about a $600,000 fund that's made up of federal money and local money. I'm asking to terminate the federal portion, so pay that federal back and run it as a local RLF. So we have control of that RLF. You don't have to mandate to what the federal government is saying. That outstanding loan remains an outstanding loan. They'll continue to make payments on that. We can loan to other people out of the reduced base, which would be about a $400,000 revolving loan base versus that $600,000.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Other questions? Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. So, Amy, so business would basically make application with the EDC for this loan, and you might have already addressed this. So when new businesses come, do they have to approach you about it, or do they know about it, or do you approach them?
It depends. You've got a really wide open question there. So when new businesses come, if we're using it as a proactive tool to compete for that project, I would use it in a letter saying, we've worked with the state and they're willing to offer this, the community is willing to offer a property tax abatement, and oh, by the way, we have this revolving loan fund that we could help with working capital or something. So it could be a comprehensive approach for attraction. If it's, say, another brewery, because that's the example that's out there right now. Say somebody like the brewery were to come forward. Hopefully, the banks know about it, so if they can't make that work, they bring us into the conversation, or we're having conversations with them already, and we bring it into the conversation. So it has to be, it's done on job creation or job retention. So it's directly tied to that, and that's not something I would see us loosening up too much. We've already greatly opened that up, so for every job now, and every job created, I think you can get up to 25,000 per job.
So does there have to be a certain number of employees with the company, or it doesn't matter? It can be small business with 2 or 20?
It could be. I mean, there's some administrative troubles with it, so you'd want to make sure it makes sense. You don't want to put a small business under more debt that they can handle. If they can go through traditional means, that makes sense. But if they go to chemical or they go to homestead and they're not able to make it, that's usually when we get brought to the table, and we might do an interest only for a period to give them that working capital. So it can be used in a variety of manners, and the document that's in your packet that kind of outlines the plan is really good information. So if you have anyone that's interested in it, definitely refer them to that. Kind of in a nutshell, that tells all about it.
Okay, other questions by council? Okay. City manager, do you want to go over your 2 recommendations?
Yes. Your Honor, members of council, I am recommending that you adopt 2 motions. The first one would be to adopt the resolution requesting the termination of the federal share of the Albion revolving loan fund. The second motion would be to require the Albion Economic Development Corporation president and board of directors to formulate and submit to the city council for approval local revolving loan fund standard terms and conditions to replace the federal standards, so that we can ensure the proper administration of our local revolving loan fund program prior to any additional loans being granted.
Any further questions? Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager, will you be at the table when, or if this happens and a discussion is coming along to put this in place? Will you be at the table?
I would be happy to work with Amy as they're working through this. She had already indicated that many of the standards that would be incorporated into this have already been worked out by EDC. I'm sure there are some additional things that need to be incorporated into it. I would be happy to work with her and to review what they come up with.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So, Councilman Winston, I believe you made the motion. Would you be willing and fine with modifying your motion to incorporate both of these?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So the modified motion is to adopt the resolution requesting the termination of the federal share of the Albion revolving loan fund and to require the Albion EDC president and board of directors to formulate and submit to the city council for approval local revolving loan fund standard terms and conditions to replace the federal standards for the proper administration of the Albion revolving loan fund program prior to any additional loans being granted. Okay. And I don't recall who supported the motion. Councilwoman Reed. So council, we modified it to incorporate both of the recommendations from the city manager. The motion's been made. Do you support? You supported the original motion. It's been modified. Do you support?
Yes, I
Thank you.
support that.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Okay. Please read the roll.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer, Reed,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Please go home and get better. Okay. Next item is request approval of the second reading and adoption, ordinance 2019-11, an ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 4 to add Division 5, Sections 280 through 284, Recreation Advisory Commission. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, is there support?
Support.
Thank you. Discussion. Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. There was something said about an email that was pertaining to this Recreation Advisory Commission. I just got a new phone, so I don't have my email downloaded from the city. And if it was sent to the city, my city email, I would like to review it before I go any further with the Recreation Advisory Commission.
Okay, so for clarification, the email that was forwarded, my recollection is, actually, I think it was an email that Councilman, at that time, Citizen Williamson, had sent to Councilwoman Brown, but it did pertain to an email sent by Mr. Bonner about relocating their offices, had nothing to do with the Recreation Committee, had nothing to do with this ordinance.
Well, I'd like to review it before I make any decision, because it might change the way I feel about it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Councilwoman Reed.
On number 3, where it says to review and make recommendations to the city council on potential capital improvements. Now, what is that?
Potential what?
Capital improvements relating to recreation. It's number 3.
Okay, let me find the page, but I
Under
think that,
duties of the commission.
yeah. I'll defer to the city attorney since you drafted it.
So capital improvement could be basically any kind of fixed asset. It could be an improvement to a park, it could be, I guess, a good tie-in for recreation, but say like basketball to the park to further a basketball program, something like that would be a capital improvement. Or, adding a tennis court or something like that. Those are examples of capital improvements.
And number 6, to make recommendations to the recreation director, city manager, city council regarding recreation programs for the city. So that would be programs you would see that should be put in or taken out, or what?
I think all of the above.
Okay.
Or modifications to existing programs. Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. So then, the duties of the commission would include but not limited to reviewing annual budgets, making recommendations. So then, where, I guess, is that in concert with the city manager? And how does that affect the city manager? That whom currently the director of recreation reports to and is under his supervision. So how does the advisory commission, so are they the layer between, I guess I don't understand, are they the layer between the city manager and the director, or?
No. No, they're not between the director and the city manager. They're an advisory committee, a commission, sorry. They're a commission that oversees the recreation, makes recommendations. They do not direct. So they would provide recommendations to both the city manager and the recreation director and the city council.
And currently, we get recommendations for the recreation department from the recreation director, is how it's set up now. So so this commission would then be doing what this director was doing for us?
No? Councilman Williamson?
If I could add, I think the spirit of the setting up of the Recreation Commission is to by no means interfere in the city manager ability to direct, hire, fire, put in place recreational policy within the city of Albion. So when we're reading this, I would ask my council member colleagues to remember that this is an advisory commission put in place to help, to give ideas, to provide input to the city manager and to the recreation director on new programs, improvements to recreational facilities. You know, I imagine there's a really active pickleball group in Albion. Let's say they want to do something through the city where they do a pickleball camp. That's a very random thing that does happen in other communities. This commission could advise and ask the city manager and the recreation director to either find grant funding for it, or is there city money available to run a league. This is in no way an administrative rubber stamp that would go beyond the city manager's authority. So I just want to make sure we're kind of clear on that. The city manager will continue to be the supervisor and the owner of the goals for the recreation department in concert with this body that is there to help make sure that the input of the citizens around Albion are included in those activities. So I understand the weariness, and especially with the current political landscape in the city, to be suspect of something where we're going to include more people, but that can only be better for Albion in the long run. And so I generally speak really strongly about this. I know that I have lots of concerns about recreation in general moving forward in Albion, and anything in a positive direction to include more voices at the table, to provide more help to Larry and to City Manager McCleary is a positive thing. So that's where I'm coming from on this. I think that's where a lot of our constituents are speaking on this. I think this is why this bubbled up to the city level. So I want to make sure we temper our suspicion of bad practice or some type of nefarious activities. I think this is here to help, it's to be supportive, and to provide some clarity as to what people want in Albion for recreational activities.
Thank you. Councilwoman Reed?
I don't think I had anything like that in mind, because the people that I've talked to, their main concern is they want to see a change in the programming. They want to see more things happening with the children, things that expand their mind, things that give them movement and things to do, things inside and out. You're talking about ping pong, you know, and I had looked up one thing about a recreation department that had things going on like chess checkers and dominoes. Chess, a lot of kids are doing because it's mind expanding, you know, and a lot of different things. I'd like to see T-ball come back. I'd like to even see, I was looking at all the baseball fields we got around here where they used to have adult baseball and children's baseball, which would be nice to have that active again, you know, tennis in the park, things. There's a lot of things that we are not doing that could be done, and I think that's basically what parents are talking about. They want to see more programs that get the kids in it, that's not just standing around talking, or swimming is good, and I'd like to see more of teaching kids how to swim instead of just playtime. So things like that is what I was concerned about, and what people who are talking to me are concerned.
Councilwoman Spicer?
Thank you. So this would be a standing committee, am I correct?
This is an additional commission, yes.
Commissions. And so I think that, while I appreciate Council Williamson's explanation, I guess I'd like to hear thoughts and opinion comments from the city manager.
Thank you.
Could I say something before you go with that? Also think about, please, I'd like to see the Breeders' Park, I'd like to see that plugged back up and put back into a skating rink. I learned to skate down there when I was about 10 years old. And a lot of people were saying, you know, it's just a mud hole. Plug it up and let's ice skate on it some more.
City Manager McCleary.
Thank you, councilors. First of all, I have the utmost confidence that if there was any intrusion on the city manager's authority under the charter, our esteemed city attorney would let you know that. In reading this ordinance, I am very confident that it does not in any way conflict with the city manager's authority under the charter. Actually, the way I read this, it actually complements what we are doing. It creates a commission that allows us to look more closely at some of the issues regarding recreation, to be more focused, and to create additional opportunities, and to make sure that we are focusing our resources, our scarce resources, where they're really needed. So I look at this as complementary to what we are already doing, so I have no concerns with it.
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments, City Manager McCleary, because you are the person who has the task and the charge of advising council. And if we cannot come to you for direction with regard to how we should proceed, then, you know, we don't need a city manager. But so I think I appreciate your comments, and I thank you very much.
Further comments or questions by council? Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. As I stated earlier, I would like to see this email before I make a decision.
Okay. Councilwoman Clark.
So I did some studying and listened to a lot of different things. I do understand the idea of having the commission. I guess I support it more now than what I did before, after some of the research that I did personally. One thing that for our children in the area, I researched how children interact and act and where they're at right now. And right now, if we look at our children, most of our youth can't get away from the phone and don't utilize their brains or their bodies in any other way except for moving and shifting things on a phone. So if we can incorporate some people in the city that really have ideas and would like to see us move forward so that we can get our youth more engaged, because that's where we're headed with the technology. Technology is wonderful. I'm not against it at all. But at the same time, it's causing our children to go into isolation and disassociation and having problems with being engaged. So looking at that, I think that's something that we need to, like some of the ideas that have been shared, it's getting to the point that even in the future, they're saying within 20 years, some of our youth will have to actually physically go get therapy just to be able to disengage themselves from being so attached because of what's being fed in their minds that we don't hear compared to what we think we know that they're seeing. So, you know, the more we're a small community, the more we can keep those type of things going and moving forward, the better our community will be. That's just what I need to say.
Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. If you noticed, we just sat up here and gave some advice to our city manager about how our recreation department should look. So it's just weird to me that we just advised the city manager and we're sitting here talking about getting an advisory committee when we just did it.
Any further comments? Okay. So the motion before us is to approve the ordinance, request approval resolution 2020-01. No, I'm on the wrong. Thank you. Request approval, second reading and adoption of ordinance 2019-11, an ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 4, to add Division 5, Sections 280 through 284, Recreation Advisory Committee. It's been moved and supported. We've discussed it. Ms. Domingo, please read the roll.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
No.
Spicer,
I think that, no,
No?
no.
Okay. Williamson?
Yes.
Clark?
Yes.
And Mayor Atchison?
Yes. Okay. Next item. Discussion approval, first reading ordinance 2020-01, an ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 4, to add Division 6, Sections 2, 320 through 2, 327, Arts Commission. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So, open up to the copy of the ordinance. All right. And I'd ask our city attorney just to give us an overview.
Sure. So, it's a 5-member commission, staggered terms. Each term is 3 years. The initial set of terms is 1 for 1, 2 for 2, and 2 for 3 years to make sure that they're staggered. Just to give kind of an overview of the duties, they advise the city manager and councils on arts programs in the city, whether or not there's funding for funding opportunities for arts, developing sponsored activities for those arts, promoting arts and culture in the community, implementing a public art program. I think I already mentioned fundraising, preparation of grant applications, managing an annual budget determined by the council, reviewing proposed public art, administering a public art program under the city council's approval. The council would set forth the plan and guidelines, recommending to the manager and council works of art for purchase, or whether they're going to have somebody create the public artwork, making sure that, providing annual reports to the council on their activities, things of that nature. The meetings are all subject to the OMA. They have to meet at least 6 times annually. They elect officers. There's no compensation. There's very specific restrictions on expenditures for works of art. They have to, it can only be for works of art on public property, limited to things like the cost of the actual production of art, maintenance, the physical aspects of it. It also sets up the public art fund. That's basically it in a nutshell, unless there's questions.
Questions by council?
So
No.
is-
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. So this is the commission where we talked about the artwork around the city, murals and such, and is that, am I right? Is that what?
It includes that.
It includes that. Okay. And, okay, he talked about the terms and the member, okay, got it, thank you.
Okay. So I would suggest and request that we expand the 5 members to a commission of 7, similar as we did with the recreation. We have quite a few artists in all kinds of genres. We are really trying to promote music, dance, other things. And I think with a commission of 7, it would provide us the flexibility to include a broader scope representation of that. So one change that I am requesting is that we expand the commission members to 7. City Attorney?
If you do that, my suggestion would be then that you increase the number that are staggered for 1 year
Right.
to 2 members, and then 3 members that are staggered or for 3 years.
Right, similar to the fashion that you implemented in the recreation order. Yep. Comments, questions by council? Would you read the roll, please.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Next item is discussion and approval to establish a work group for sidewalks to define the tasking, the scope of the work of the committee, and the membership. And, so may I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, support?
Support.
Okay, thank you. Discussion. Councilwoman Reed.
I am hoping to have the dedication of Holland Park done in June, around Juneteenth. And when I was reading in here, this wouldn't conclude until October? Is this commission going to, is this group going to go on until then, deciding what would be done about sidewalks?
Well, I think we need to define the scope, and I think part of the, or I think the core issue is the money that is in the sidewalk fund was, as the city attorney has explained to us, and has been backed up by the city manager, that the money was raised as a levy against all property owners, regardless of whether they had sidewalks or not, and without any thought of how much the actual repairs of the sidewalks were, so it is essentially a tax. And therefore, the dollars are tax dollars, and the city cannot legally expend those dollars on private property. So we're asking to establish this committee to have representatives from each precinct to
I understand that.
come up with a methodology of how we're going to expend it.
Okay, so how long do you think that's going to take?
I don't know. I mean, I think the committee could get together and do it within 60 days. If everybody was in agreement and there was a logical explanation or proposal, such as let's focus on the handicap accessibility in the intersections and spread that over the city in all precincts. And if that was acceptable to the committee and they came back and made that recommendation, and if the city council supported it, then that's how we would expend it. And then they could look at and how that impacts Holland Park and your precinct. Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. I, in my quest to, and having conversations with several constituents in my precinct, and basically requesting whether they would like to participate on such an advisory committee. The couple people that I talked to made mention, after I shared what the charge and the task of the advisory committee is, the constituents felt that, the three that I heard back from, the two of them felt that it was really something that they didn't feel that their time would be wisely used, because the charge is it's a sidewalk fund, and it can only be used for curbs and sidewalks, and after crosswalks, and after thinking about further the conversation with them, I too think that an advisory committee for sidewalks is not really necessary. I mean, it can only be spent on sidewalks or crosswalks or curbs. I think that we had a discussion here with Director Phillips, and he basically informed us that we had, he made a suggestion as what we could do with the money. And then Attorney Harkness informed us that, because it was a special assessment for sidewalks, we can only use it for sidewalks. So an advisory commission I think it's something that I don't think is necessary. I think it's something that council can decide. The city manager made a suggestion for use of the money, and that's why we pay our city manager. The money that we pay him is to make suggestions and direct council. And the direction that he gave, I think it was ideal. It basically served the majority of the community in a way where everyone could possibly benefit. So I think that advisory committee is totally necessary. I think it's a charge, and it's a no-brainer, and it's something that council can do, something that we were elected to do. I don't think we need an advisory committee to decide how to spend sidewalk money. We have to spend it on a sidewalk. So that's my thing, is I don't think we should waste the time with an advisory committee. It's something that council could decide at the next meeting or at a study session.
Councilman Williamson.
I'm speaking in favor of the motion to establish the sidewalk committee. In our packet for tonight's meeting, the city manager lined up a few things for us. One of those being that we could just allow the city manager and the city attorney to determine allocation and placement of the funds. But as he noted, it would ignore valuable input from the public. And so the recommended motion tonight from the city manager going forward would be that we would, if you look on the second page of the summary sheet, would be to establish this committee with the intention of going and looking at the sidewalks, identifying and recommending to City Council appropriate equitable uses of the special assessment proceeds, and then with the term of the committee to expire on October 31st, 2020. In my reading of this, it means that the committee could run up through that point. It would have to have its work done by then, but there could be varying degrees of things that they bring forward. They could bring forward, curbs and crosswalks as phase 1. They could bring forward large chunks of public sidewalks as phase 2. They could bring an entire package in 30 days and say approve it this way. But from what Mr. McCleary, if you could chime in here if I'm interpreting this wrong, but it seems like you're very comfortable having the public have some input on how these funds are expended on sidewalks and curbs going forward.
I am comfortable, and it really flows from what I saw as the desire of the council to have that input from the public. I do share the concern about making sure we are moving forward expeditiously to get this done, because we really want to be able to incorporate whatever comes out of this into our comprehensive capital improvement plan going forward. But there are some issues that I think would be helpful if we were able to educate some citizens on what the issues are, the limitations that we have in being able to use these funds, and get some feedback from them. I so much appreciate the comments that I hear about, the city manager's recommendations. I do appreciate those. But the date that I put in for the expiration of the committee was simply to set a date certain, because by charter, we have to make sure if there are council members serving on this committee or what have you, we have to have a date certain. But also to make it clear that their work has to be wrapped up by that time. That does not preclude them from being done in 60 days, as the mayor had mentioned.
Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. You said that you would welcome community input. Isn't that what council members are for? Aren't we supposed to be out there communicating with people in our precinct? Because if you're not communicating with your precinct, you really don't know how they feel. And those that are communicating with their precinct, we bring the information back to the table. So I myself, I had 3 people that I had chose, and all 3 were just basically like spend it on a sidewalk. They did not feel that they needed to be on a board or anything like that, that it was just simple as ABC. I did say that I would like to see it split up in 6 ways, but after talking to them, I felt that they were okay. Some were okay with doing the crosswalks and things like that. So we should be the ones gathering information and bringing it back to the table.
Other comments? Councilman Smith.
I have talked with a few of my constituents on this, and get out your pencils. Just going by the document from our study session minutes from December 16th, 2019, where we had discussed this. And please understand, none of these figures are in stone. They are just what was presented to us then. We have approximately $450,000 remaining in the sidewalk fund. The city also has approximately $94,000 in Act 51 funding that must be spent on non-motorized items such as sidewalks and signs. That'll give you $544,000. We had talked about doing the ADA compliant crosswalks throughout the city. It was figured that would be about $1,000 per crosswalk. There are 319 non-ADA compliant crosswalks. That's $319,000. The figure was given to us pretty much a grand total of $164,300 for the sidewalk project in Holland Park. Those together is $483,300. You take that away from the $544,000, that'll take care of the ADA and the compliance and also Holland Park. That will leave you $60,700 for road signs.
So you basically just giving us a plan.
Just an idea from my constituents.
I hear you. I got you.
That's what I just said.
Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. I also see that it says council members shall select and submit the names of their prospective precinct representatives. I don't have one because they do not feel that we need a committee. So it's going to fall short to some precincts. And do we have a suggestion of, do we really want this committee? Or because some precincts are going to be left out.
That's by choice.
As far as
Councilman Williamson,
Right.
did you have a comment? Okay. So for council members that have had no luck in finding anyone in your precinct that's willing to serve on the committee, I'm sure the remainder of council can reach out to people that we know that live in those precincts and find somebody who lives in those precincts to serve on the committee. Okay, so there is a motion before us to form the committee. That's been supported. I don't hear any amendments to it.
I do
Councilman
want
Williamson.
to make sure that it's amended to state the way it is written under the recommended motion. And I'd like it to have a date of January 30th, 2020, by being the latest date possible for council members to turn in names to serve on the committee. I know that we've already turned in names. But
You've got names,
Yep.
and I think everybody has names that are going to have names, so.
I just wanted to put the date in there so
Sure.
we had a
Okay.
finite point.
I just want to know, do we have any advice from our city attorney moving forward?
Well, I think the manager's laid out your options for you. I mean, he's giving you three options of what you can do. I mean, you can do nothing, or you can simply endow him, or not even say endow him, he's already got the authority, but basically direct him to spend the money in a manner determined by council. There's been several suggestions thrown out by Councilmember Smith, and the manager himself has provided some examples, or you can do the committee. And so I think you have three options before you, and I think one of the latter two are ones that you're probably going to be should select from, because I would say this: I definitely wouldn't advise just allowing the money to sit there. I mean, you've got to do something with it. Now that you've collected it, regardless of the fact that it may have been improperly collected.
So personally, I'm absolutely comfortable with going with the option as laid out by Councilman Smith. I have no issues with that at all. That seems a reasonable, fair approach. I will caution that by saying that since every property owner was assessed this special assessment over a 10-year period, I think it is incumbent that we give property owners from across the city the opportunity to participate in it. Nobody is going to be happy with, hey, I paid my $50 every year for 10 years, and now you're not going to fix my sidewalk. Legally, we can't. But the committee provides an avenue for residents to be part of that discussion, which to me is worth that. And I hope they come back and go with the option that you presented. Either one was fine with me, but it's part of the process. I think there's going to be a lot of upheaval and discussion and irritated people that, hey, I paid this and now I'm not getting anything, you lied to me. Okay, so if you would read the roll.
What are we voting?
We're voting on whether or not to form a committee. I tell you what, I'll read this. To establish an ad hoc sidewalk program fund committee comprising the city manager, director of public services, and one citizen representative from each of the 6 precincts of the city selected by council members for the purposes of reviewing the legal concerns regarding the establishment and collection of previous sidewalk special assessments and sidewalk program fund, and 2, identifying and recommending to city council appropriate legal and equitable uses of the special assessment proceeds collected and remaining in the sidewalk program fund, with the term of the committee to expire on October 31st, 2020. Council members shall select and submit their respective precinct representatives for the committee to the city manager not later than 31 January 2020. And the only change from what is written in front of you from what I just read, I deleted 3 words. Selected by the council member from that precinct. Because as of the date that's in there, which is reasonable, if a council member is unable to identify somebody from the precinct, we need to move forward. So, that's the motion. Is there support? Okay. Would you please read the roll?
Councilmember Lawler,
No.
Spicer,
No.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So I'd ask council members to please get the names turned into the city manager as soon as possible, so we can get that off and going and get some sidewalks fixed. Okay. Okay. Next item is discussion and approval of the 2020 fee schedule. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, discussion. Councilman Smith.
Yes, I'd ask that this be brought back so we could get this running forward for the year 2020. I do appreciate the talks I've been able to have with City Manager McCleary on some of these fees, and I've noticed that 99.9% of them were rolled back. The ones that I do have a bit of contention with are on the sewer connection charge based on water's diameter side, or based on the size of the meter or the pipe. These have all been increased by basically 7.5% across the board, and it shows out to the side explanation for change. Council approved on 4/1/2019. Going back to the video of that meeting at hour 1, minute 4, second 20, it was discussed to raise the sewer demand charge for individual residences, which means our sewer charges are going up 7.5% per year for 5 years. That was voted on and approved by council. I did not find anywhere in that entire video where they discussed raising connection fees, and it also raises the question, are they planning on raising that 7.5% per year because that's what was voted on and approved by council.
And we're all looking at our city manager for your comment, sir.
The only thing I can tell you, Counselor, is that my understanding is that the changes to the sewer connection fees and the sewer demand charges were in accordance with action that had been taken back I don't know if that was the effective date of the changes or if that was council's meeting date on April 1st. But my understanding was that these increases were in accordance with the action that the council had taken, based on the sewer rate analysis that was completed. And what I'm hearing from you is that the motion of council was to only increase the demand charges?
Yes. That would be 7.5% per year for 5 years.
Okay.
So if you apply that to the connection charge, some of these are going to end up somewhere in the stratosphere.
What I would request is that we table the fee schedule until we get this clarified, so that I can provide you with an answer on that. I would prefer that you table this until we make sure we've been able to compare it to the actual motion that was adopted by council.
I'm in favor of that. Who made the original motion?
You can table. Move the table. Someone got to move the table.
I move to table this until we can clarify the sewer connection charges.
Support.
Okay. All those in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay. All right. Next item, schedule a study session for rental certification program. I believe you requested that be put on the agenda?
I don't think I did. I wasn't
Okay.
at the previous meeting, so
It was the meeting before, the last one you were here.
I don't think I did, but no, I wouldn't have said a study session because we had 3 of those. I wouldn't have said that. I didn't.
That was my item.
Okay.
That wasn't.
I apologize, Counselor, that was my item. Your Honor, members of council, I'm requesting that you schedule a study session for the week of January 27th, so that we can start discussion on the rental certification program. I wanted to have an opportunity to have staff discuss with you what we have come up with as far as a proposed ordinance and a proposed program for the rental inspection program. I know that this is an issue that the city has been working on since, I've heard since at least 2016. I don't want us rush going through this. I want us to have an opportunity to have an open and honest discussion and dialogue on this issue. Make sure that we are addressing all issues and concerns with the program, hashing out the different positions and opinions that there are surrounding this program. So I'm requesting that we have a work session to discuss the particulars of the ordinance and the proposed program.
Okay. Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm really not understanding this because we have had several meetings about this issue, and Councilmember Spicer has I'm not sure if she talked to you or about what goes on in the meetings for the rental certification program, but it sounds like we're gonna do it all over again.
I hope I didn't give you that impression, because I don't think that's the case. The committee engaged in a lot of hard work to prepare the draft ordinance, to come up with the parameters for a rental inspection program. The purpose of the study session is to have an opportunity to discuss what we as a committee have come up with, and get the feedback from council members, start to engage in a dialogue with the citizens on the program before we move forward with the actual introduction of the ordinance. Even if it's just one study session, I think it would be very helpful if we were able to discuss this together, all of us, and also allow an opportunity for citizens to hear what we have come up with and to be able to answer their questions, because I'm sure there are a lot of questions and concerns about a rental inspection program. Many of them legitimate concerns. I think some of them are misunderstandings about what the program is intended to do and what it would do. And so I think it would be helpful for us to have that dialogue before we move forward with the introduction of an ordinance.
Okay, so the city manager's requested a study session. I absolutely agree with that. The week of the 27th of January, the only 2 days that I'm available are Thursday and Friday. Councilman Williamson.
I was just going to make the suggestion that you not do it in council chambers. Some of the feedback I've received from citizens outside of my precinct even is that when we do these study sessions, and to be true, like working together study sessions with citizens and the council, if we could maybe do it at the Ludington Center or somewhere where it could be more collaborative. This issue has been contentious and hasn't come to council for so long because of that, and I think that we need to foster an inclusive environment of our property owners and our council members and our renters, and it would be much better to take it out of council chambers and into the community, and provide an environment where people can have honest, open, safe conversations with one another moving forward. So that would be my one suggestion. I would also suggest that if we could please keep it on a Monday night, that'd be great.
That's 'cause I'm not coming in here on a Friday.
Okay, so Monday, the 27th is not available. There's two conflicts. One is the school board meeting, Marshall Public School Board meeting, and the other is the Downtown Development Authority Citizens Advisory Commission discussion with the DDA. So Monday, the 27th does not work. So the question is, do we pick a different day or do we move it into February? I'm looking for input from council. Councilwoman Lawler.
If we could, Mayor, move it into January, maybe an hour before our first meeting.
February?
Did I not say? Oh, okay, February.
Okay, so if we do it on a Monday, which is a reasonable request, the first Monday in February is the 3rd. So if we move it into February, we can't do it before our first meeting in February.
Could we do it on February 10th? Could we do it on Monday, February 10th?
I see no reason we couldn't do that. So, any other member of council have an issue with that day?
We're just asking for time.
I think there's going to be a lot of discussion, so earlier in the evening that we start on Monday, what's the consensus of council for a start time?
6 o'clock works.
Okay. Anybody have a conflict or an issue with that? Okay. Monday, the 10th of February, commencing at 6 p.m., a study session. And City Manager, I'd ask if you can, Councilman Williamson.
I have a question. Could we possibly, when we post this meeting, could we have a call for questions and clarifications that could be submitted to the City Hall that we could have ready to go answers from the different department heads and from the City Manager to share at the meeting? That way there can be kind of a, here's kind of an open forum for people to submit questions and have answers ready to go the night of.
Would you clarify for the city clerk?
So you're gonna post the meeting, and then people should be able to, probably you're the best person since you're the clerk, but the city, you're in charge here. But someone at City Hall should be in charge of receiving like email and written communications, questions regarding the policy, because now this is in the citizens' hands. And so there are gonna be people who have lots of questions. So if we can get those in early and get answers generated from City Hall about technicalities, things about the policy before, then we're ready to go and have a real, hopefully productive conversation that night.
So, makes sense? Okay. All right.
Yes.
It's your show.
Definitely, and I love that idea. We can post something on the homepage of the city's website so that people know who to contact. We'll provide a link to the email address, and we'll do our best to try to solicit input ahead of time. I know that our Director of Building Planning and Code Enforcement is already preparing some background information on this to try to anticipate some of the questions and concerns that will come up, so he's already working on some information as well.
And if we can ask you or your staff to pursue reserving the Ludington Center?
I've got that.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Next item, schedule study session for solid waste collection contract.
Your Honor, members of council, the solid waste collection contract with Granger Services is expiring the end of March. We need to move forward with preparing and advertising an RFP for a replacement contract. I am requesting a work session with the city council as soon as possible on this so that we can talk about the options that are available for solid waste services. Not only solid waste collection, recycling collection, materials collection, yard waste collection. As council is aware, the county wants to migrate away from the recycling drop-off center. So that will no longer be an option for us once we have a new rubbish collection contract in place. So we need to try to incorporate those services somehow into the new solid waste contract. But we also need to talk about, the scope and level of services we feel are necessary for our citizens or are desired by our citizens. Unfortunately, we've got a limited amount of time to try to work these issues out so that we can get the RFP prepared and advertised. So this has a little more of a time pressure component to it.
Okay. All right. So would a member of council wish to propose a date? Councilman Williamson.
Does next Wednesday work? Wednesday the
Wednesdays are not good.
29th?
Wednesday the 29th. Actually,
Because
okay. Members of council?
Thursday. This Thursday.
Thursday of next week.
The 30th?
So that's either the, Councilman Clark.
I can't, I have my precinct meeting planned for Thursday
Okay.
of next week.
All right, so the question is Wednesday, the 29th. The other day that week that's I can support is Friday, the 31st. So Councilmember Williamson has asked for Wednesday, the 29th. Anybody have an issue with that?
I do.
Okay. Friday, the 31st.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just offer, just as a suggestion to council, I mean, obviously, everyone already has the first and third Mondays available. You could always consider doing it at 6 p.m. on the I think it's the 3rd.
We did have a member of the public request that we form a citizens committee. I think the explanation on the timing doesn't support that. So when we scheduled this study session, because it's another one of the items here in the city that has been contentious and hard feelings, I think we need to provide the residents an opportunity to participate in that.
and Monday the 27th doesn't work?
Monday the 27th.
There was a reason the Monday the 27th.
There's a DDA board and the school board.
Oh, yeah, the school, that is, you gotta go
Yeah.
with that.
And that Wednesday, I'm on a Marshall committee.
Tuesday, the 28th?
Yeah.
So what was the decision about having it at 6 PM prior to a regular council meeting?
No, I recommend against it because I don't think that'll be sufficient time to provide the community to participate. And I know there are a lot of members of the community that feel very strongly about this, evidenced by, we have a member of the community here tonight, and all of us have heard comments. So what about Tuesday, the 28th?
Yes.
Works for me.
I'll be running late, but I can try to make
Okay.
it work. Yep.
Okay, but it is important for you to,
No, yep,
Okay.
I will be here as
Okay.
quickly as I can.
all right. 6.
See you at 8.
Tuesday, the 28th.
So that's next week, right?
That is correct. What, if that start time just doesn't support, can we,
Just do it. No, it's important that we do this.
okay,
Let's get it started. I'll be here.
okay. So Tuesday, the 28th at 6 PM. And if we can do the same thing with asking people to submit their recommendations and whatnot. And I'd ask each council member to go out to your networks that you talk to your constituents and ask them to provide their input. Councilwoman Clark?
Is it, I'm thinking there's a function at the Bone Theater on the 28th. Yeah. At 7.
Which convocation? What college? Saved us from ourselves.
Can we do it earlier in the day?
No?
Can I offer a suggestion?
Yes, sir.
Given that the council has several items still on the agenda tonight, might I suggest that maybe the manager or his designees send out a survey of available dates and just roll with the one that has the most number of.
Can the work session be recorded as well, just in case there's one or two of us that can't go, posted?
Certainly.
That way, I know it's not usual.
Any dissent on that? Okay. So you will, and whatever the date and time ends up being, if you can see about getting a suitable space that we can encourage the residents to participate. Thank you. He's gonna see if he can get us to Ludington Center or the Isman House or something. Okay. Next item is discussion approval of changes and updates to ordinance 2017-06 and ordinance to amend ordinance 22-181 sidewalk cafes. Is there a motion? 'Cause I believe what the city, thank you. Is there support?
Support.
Okay. So I believe the city attorney is asking us to have a discussion and provide you guidance so you can go draft the ordinance.
Yeah, one thing I can tell council is, I mean, the current ordinance is somewhat outdated just as a result of the zoning changes that have been made by the city. I mean, that's something that's gonna have to be updated because it still refers to B1, B2, B3, B4. But aside from that, I know Councilman Williamson had wanted some sort of an expansion, and so, I mean, whatever the council wants to do, I mean, I'm happy to advise on how we might craft that, but I didn't wanna put the cart before the horse, so to speak, and come to you with something only to have to
Right.
redo it all.
Right, one of the things in looking at this, I wanted to make sure that we spelled out the ability of business owners, especially because it's not along the Superior Street corridor, it's a state highway. It's the side streets like the Ash, Ash, Erie, Cass, Porter, those areas, outlining what is permissible or expanding what is permissible. So, having curbside service basically. So like when people want to eat outside, can they be served outside, and is that permissible? Or, having wait staff go back and forth from inside restaurants and things like that. I wanted some more clarity on that because in other communities, they specifically specify that those things are allowed, and we don't have a lot of content on that. I'm thinking like the brewery on their side might want to have outside side seating, the bakery on their street side, any new development along those intersections, being able to encourage business who might want to have outdoor dining and drinking options. So, and having rules around like if the brewery is going to serve alcohol outside, what are the designations for where that has to be, and does it have to be closed off, and who has to take care of it? That's what I'm looking to do and establish and have ready to go for the spring.
Okay.
The director's here in case you wanted to direct any questions right to him.
Well, maybe he could just answer the question. I mean, I didn't know if we could change something to encourage it.
John Tracy, Director of Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement. I'm going to hand you out what the current
All I have is that one page.
zoning is on that. And this is also on the city website in chapter 22.
I've got a digital one. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
If you look through the zoning ordinance there, you'll see it refers both to public sidewalks and also to cafes on private owned property. It spells out quite a bit on it already. The difference probably would be if you're looking for someone to want to have walk-through, for example, on a public sidewalk where the cafe is on the opposite side of the building, and then have the walk area going through, actually through that outside area. Currently in the zoning ordinance, or not zoning ordinance, but the code of ordinance, that is not allowed. That would be up to if the council would want to change that, and if the city attorney feels that would be approved through the state.
City Attorney Harvey.
And from my experience, I think that cafes may run into an issue with the Liquor Control Commission having a walkthrough through the middle of where the area is serviced, because, I mean, and by way of example, if anyone's been to downtown Lansing, many establishments on Washington Street where they have outdoor dining, where you serve alcoholic beverages, but they are all enclosed. And so, and usually when we have special events, Liquor Control Commission specifically requires that it be enclosed. So my gut is it tells me that they're probably gonna require it to be, not have a sidewalk passing through the middle of it. Now, I mean, to serve alcohol, now to have just outdoor operations at tables, which this would also encapsulate, that is not an issue, I don't think, with walkthrough. I don't think the health department's gonna have any pushback, but it's about, if we're talking about service of alcohol outside, that access needs to be restricted to prevent minors and stuff from getting access.
I have all the answers to make these changes.
Mr. Tracy.
I do know it's been brought up as far as maybe also to lengthen the time period that they're allowed during the season. Some have expressed interest in seeing sooner and running a little later into the year too, which, I mean, I guess that would be a reasonable request. So the majority of both the public sidewalk cafes and the private property cafes is pretty much addressed in there, but there are some areas that I know some of the individuals who are either looking at or have would like to see changed a little bit, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I had
Councilman Reed.
I had read about the outside, like around where they have alcohol, and that you had to have something that was at least 4 feet tall. And I think that's a good idea. With our because it's right there by the library. And you've got people coming and going from the library, children coming and going from the library. And I don't think that they should have to see that.
If I might just say one more thing. The current ordinance, of course, includes the downtown district and what is the mixed use now, which before was the adjacent property right outside of downtown district. One thing to remember, any cafes that go on or right next to MDOT streets, like Superior, for example, they have gone back and forth whether they allow those right on their streets or not. Last I talked to MDOT here about 6 months ago, they were looking at allowing some cafes on Superior Street, whether that's still the same today or not. But the process, though, is to go through the city first and then apply to MDOT, and that's the procedure that MDOT would like to see taken anytime it's going to affect their streets. Although I would say before we would do that we'd sit down and actually go through it with MDOT for anything submitted, just to make sure we're covered. It even has some, MDOT even has some say about how close it gets to their street, and even on a side street and how it's set up, so.
Okay. All right. Do you have additional, did that provide additional clarification or not?
Well, I mean, I think we're clear on the current setup, but I mean, we can change the zoning if you want to keep it in the downtown district, but I mean, is there things that the council wants to add to make this more inclusive, or?
If I may, in a lot of cities where they do have outdoor cafes too, they have permanent, they also allow for permanent walls and structures. If you look at Marshall and you look at some of the bigger cities, typically you don't see them where it's removable fences they can remove them, but typically it's not something that's just put there and taken in every day or such. Same thing with a lot of the furniture. So in the ordinance right now, it says it all shall be both fences and or temporary, something that can be put up at night. So,
Councilman Williamson.
I guess from my vantage point, like there are a couple of things I would want extended time throughout the year to be able to operate outdoor portions of your cafe or restaurant. I would want to talk about the pass-through or public right-of-way through these areas. So that way, if there are tables and chairs outside, there's space for people to walk through and people can still be being served by staff from the restaurant. I would like to investigate a little further with people who are downtown, like the Cascarellis, the Charlies, the Malleables, what they're looking at doing and what they would like to do with their possibility of having outdoor spaces, and see what their needs are, and then bringing that back and saying, well, what can we do to best accommodate them? And we may not be able to accommodate everything, but I think that one thing that we can do at the city level is create the environment for which a business can succeed and have more opportunities to bring more people in. And I think if we expand some of this in here, I think that would make some of our constituents in the downtown area very happy. Sure.
What are the extended hours you're looking at or suggesting?
Well, I would want to go down and talk to people and see, not the extended hours, it's the extended length of time. Like I think it's April to October.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
Moving a little early, extended a little late.
Thank you.
Into the fall. I would want to talk to our business owners, and this is something I can kind of spearhead in my own time to help move this along.
Okay.
I recognize that I'm the one who's bringing it up, so I'll do the effort with help.
Okay.
Thank you for doing this, John. Thank you for calling.
So we can table this, you can go talk to the business owners.
Right, this
back
is
with
just
recommendations.
Yeah, this is just a discussion.
Okay. All right. So I'll move to table, because it does say discussion approval, doesn't it? So,
I make the motion to table this till a further meeting.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Discussion approval 2020 city goals. I believe Ms. Reed, you requested this.
I did?
I thought you did.
No, I did.
Okay. Well then,
I suggested a town hall meeting.
okay. So let's table a discussion and approval of 20. That's my recommendation because it's on here because I thought you had requested it, so I misunderstood you. Motion.
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor of tabling this, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next item, request approval to set date for town hall meeting. Okay.
I had just thought that it would be nice to have, a lot of people don't come to, well, come to the meetings, and they can't get it on TV, they can't probably get it on the computer, but I thought it would be good to have a town hall meeting, just so people could get caught up on what's going on in Albion, and new things and old things that's been changed.
Okay. Do you have a proposed date? I would suggest we do it after the two study sessions, the one on rental cert and the other on the,
I would suggest that too.
okay,
March?
all right,
I'm not saying it has to be done right now, but I think we should have one.
okay. Any member of council want to throw out a proposed date for March, such as the 9th, which is a Monday, but not a council meeting?
March 9th, I think March 9th sounds good. I'll propose that date. March 9th would be great.
Yeah.
I also would hope that at one of our next council meetings, we would outline just kind of what we want to, I mean, we have an ambitious, like, next 30 days ahead of us between a study session for trash and solid waste, and then another study session for rental certification, and then we're just going to get all back together and really have a good time on a Monday night after all those decisions have been made. So I just want to make sure that we're being strategic in how we want to spend our time together with the community that night, and what type of information we want to make sure. I also think it's a great opportunity for Darwin and, the city manager McCleary to kind of, after he's been here for almost about 6 months, to kind of hear how things are going at City Hall and all of the new changes. So I just want to make sure we put some pen to paper about what we want to accomplish at a town hall. I think that would be really important.
Anyone not able to support Monday, the 9th of March? Okay. Do I propose start time on that?
7 o'clock.
Okay. Sounds like a wonderful plan. Okay. All right, next item, request to approve, I'm sorry?
Where are we going to have that?
We'll work out the logistics. Yep. Okay. Request approval for purchase of city-owned property located at 211 Culver Street, parcel 51-012-352-01 to Ronnie Sims. Okay. Is there a motion? I'm sorry?
So moved.
Is there support?
Can someone explain?
Support.
Okay. Councilman Reed.
Can someone explain what the attachment this year that's saying it's suggested not? Where's that part?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood the question. Do you have a question about the map that you received tonight, or?
No, it was,
Just clarification on the issue itself?
yeah.
Okay.
Because it, right, let's see, Chris. I thought I read somewhere where it said.
I know what it is. I just read it.
Up here. Under recommended motion.
Councilman Williamson.
Okay, so my understanding from what was given to us in our packet is that there's been a proposal from a citizen in the community that wants to buy some property adjacent to theirs. They've had this opportunity in the past with other properties that they acquired. From what I can see in the packet tonight, it's being recommended that we deny this request for allowing this citizen to purchase this property due to finding by the city that there's no advantage to the city in letting this property go at the moment. Mr. McCleary, if you have any additional clarifications, I would hope that you'd be able to provide that.
Sure. So this request is really to split off a portion of the property that the city owns in the urban renewal area. And as we continue to split off portions of this property, it makes the remaining property less and less desirable to develop as a comprehensive residential development at some point. My understanding is that there are developers who are interested in developing this entire area. And I think the property is more valuable if we work to keep it as one large parcel for development rather than taking pieces off of it all the time. Also, this request does not provide any type of guarantee that anything will be constructed on the property, so it will not necessarily add additional tax base to the community. And it is so important that we move forward in a way that we are trying to develop or redevelop the land in the city that grows our tax base and allows us to continue to make taxes in our community affordable for everyone. The more we can grow that tax base, the lower we can keep our millage rates for everyone. And so my recommendation is that we deny this request.
Okay. City Attorney.
I just wanted to offer from a legal perspective, it would probably not be wise to approve the sale of a property when we don't have an offer stating an amount. I think it would pose a problem for the city to approve the sale of a property not knowing what you may or may not get. You don't usually sell property like that. You usually don't enter into the sale for a house and say, I'm going, I'd like to buy your house, but I'm not going to give you the number. So.
Thank you. Comments by council? Okay. So it's been moved, supported. We've got a recommendation from the city manager not to approve this sale. Outline the reasons, and I do know there are at least one, I think, two developers specifically looking at that area. And so I intend to vote against the sale. If you would read the roll, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
No. Point of information.
Yeah, 'cause
Point of information, if you're voting no, you're voting against the sale. If you're voting yes, you're voting for the sale.
That's correct.
No.
Thank you, Councilman Williamson.
Reed.
No.
Smith.
Pardon me, no.
Lawler.
No.
Spicer.
No.
Williamson.
No.
And Mayor Hutchison.
No. Okay. Next item, discussion to schedule city manager's initial performance review. I put that on there, so I'll lead off. As you, Councilmember Williamson just commented here just a few moments ago, city manager's been here. We're at about the 90-day period. I would like to proceed with setting a date to do that and the methodology, and I would encourage and ask my colleagues to let's solicit and get feedback, input from key stakeholders in the community, key entities, and so we can take that into consideration, because that's a key part of the job. So, open it up for discussion.
Do we actually have a performance review format that is either contractually we're obligated to follow, or one that we've always followed?
City Attorney.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about, a performance review in terms of a personnel evaluation, I mean, we have to keep in mind that Mr. McClary has the option to have that in a closed session.
Correct.
So I would bear that in mind. I mean, aside from which, I mean, a contract does provide for initial performance reviews, but, I mean, other than that,
Right. Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's closed or open. I was wondering about the format of, like, is there a structure to which we do these performance reviews? Is it a 360? Do we have what do we do to standardize the performance review? Do we have that in place?
So Councilwoman Clark.
So from the initial onset, when Sonia, myself, and Mayor Etchison was negotiating back and forth with him, there was some guidelines and parameters that we kind of stated that we wanted to be reviewed within his performance evaluation. So that's, from my understanding, that's the most that we have, unless there's something else.
So during, as what Councilwoman Clark is alluding to, during the discussions and negotiation, it was requested by Mr. McCleary to have a 360-degree performance review at, I think actually at 90 days or something. You know, I think we set in the contract no later than, I believe it was semi-annual or annual. So, but we all agreed that yes, we could have additional reviews. So we can reach out to the labor attorney and ask for a recommended template process for doing a 360 review, if that's the consensus of council and if there's no objection on the part of the city manager. City attorney.
so I would just offer that the contract in section 7 that addresses performance reviews says that mayor and council shall review and evaluate manager's performance at least once annually on or before employment anniversary date. Shall be a grace period of 30 days from the employment anniversary date, during which a late review may be made. Shall define such goals and performance objectives for the manager, determine necessary to attain proper operation for the city. So at least under the performance review section, it doesn't.
So it's just one
Although under,
a year maybe?
No less than one per year.
I'm just looking to see if we put initial ones elsewhere.
So,
Section 7 was the performance, specifically performance reviews.
Councilman Winchell?
to be clear, I think we should schedule one, timely. I think it would be nice if we could do, like we did with the other meeting, and do a kind of a poll of council members of when they're available over the next month or two. Secondly, in order to be thoughtful about the performance review process, I think it would be good to have what is the metric, what is the format that we're going to use to do it, with what's being measured, and then also having the opportunity for the city manager to have a response to that to us prior to having a performance evaluation meeting, and then also giving him the opportunity to let us know prior to whether he would like that in closed or open session. I just want to make sure that we kick this off the right way with our new city manager and make sure we're being as consistent as possible.
Right.
Those forms, the scored form.
You still have those?
We still have those.
We can't use those?
Can if you want.
So the key parts of this is I'm asking for council to consider including input from key stakeholders, employees. That's the best explanation I can give for a 360 review. It's something that our city manager recommended while we were negotiating hiring him. And as we're getting started, I think it'd be wise to do that. Councilwoman Reed.
We have one that we use with. A template that we use with other city managers. Can we take a look at that and see if it's acceptable with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any dissent on having inputs from key stakeholders and community members? Councilman Williams.
Okay, I don't have any dissent on this, but
Okay.
there is a way to do this. There are formal structures put this in place, and it's not willy-nilly, I go and talk to the
Nope.
DC director. So I want to make sure that we are consistent, because these we will want to talk to these key stakeholders again in a year or in a year and a half, and we do another one. because that's how we'll measure success. So I just want to be clear, we're not asking each of us to go out and say, oh, DDA director, EDC director, Joe Blow downtown outside of City Hall, who smokes outside City Hall or something. You know, we want to make sure we get this tightened up. So just make sure that we're following a good process. We don't have a good track record.
I'd like to first take a look at what we've used before.
So if you would forward out to all the council members so they can see the standard template form, and we'll ask the labor attorney to provide a template, a process to do a 360 review, and we'll get that routed out to council members, and we'll take it up again in February and determine how we're going to do that and set a date. Is that acceptable by all council? Okay. Councilwoman Lawler, is that acceptable to you? Okay. All right. Future agenda items. Council members have future agenda items?
I will have two. I've had one meeting, I'll have another meeting on the 30th of this month. So I would like just to add that so I can give everybody a review of what was discussed for the grocery store, desert, and Epic City meeting.
Okay. Do you have anything, city attorney? Okay. Other council members have future agenda items? Okay. All right. So I'll formulate something, but I think whatever the sidewalk committee comes with at some point, we're going to need to come up with a plan, how we're going to get the sidewalks, the remainder of the sidewalks, a process in place to get those fixed over a period of time. And so we'll probably wait until after we have our study session and whatnot, but that'll be coming up. Did you have any agenda items you wanted to make sure you got scheduled, city manager?
In my manager's report, I just have a list of running items that you need to have on your radar that will be coming up in the near future. So that's a working list.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item. Public comments. Persons addressing city council shall limit their public comments to no more than 3 minutes. Proper decorum is required. Personal comments about, attacks against, or imputing the motives of council members, city staff members, or members of the public are inappropriate. If you have public comments this evening, please come forward, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Jason Bomia, 531 North Marshall in Marshall, Michigan. I am a 10th District Judge serving all of Calhoun County. First, I wanted to say I had a chance to attend the MLK Community Dinner last night and listen to those kids recite what they recited today, and it was really compelling, a wonderful thing to see. It was a great event, and there were a lot of people in the community who were there, and I was glad to be a part of it. Now, I was appointed by the governor to serve as a judge, and I started in September. And as an appointed judge, I haven't had an opportunity to get out in the community and meet as many people as I would like because I didn't have an opportunity to campaign. And for the past 20 years, I've been practicing law. I practice general civil, criminal, a wide variety of cases I handled. And that kept me in the courtroom, that kept me in my office because I was working to make a living. That kept me at home, but all of that has changed now as a public official. It's important for me to be out in the community and meeting people, and that's why I'm here tonight, and I'm glad to be here. I've attended many community meetings and township meetings and city meetings, and I've learned a lot. Now, as a district judge, I see a lot of cases. I handle misdemeanor cases through trial, felony cases through preliminary examination, landlord-tenant cases, ordinance violations, speeding tickets, civil matters. It's a wide array of cases. And with 20 years of experience behind me, I'm well-suited for the job. It's a nonpartisan position. You'll see my name on the ballot in November coming up. And I'm just very proud and happy to be serving in this capacity. I wanted to introduce myself, and you'll be seeing a lot more of me. Probably not in court, but here. You've had quite a tremendously long meeting tonight. You've worked very hard. I commend you and people who are here. Gary Tompkins, Marquetta, hi, how are you doing? I'll save you the last 20 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Jason Bomia. I have cards, if the council doesn't mind, I'll pass them out.
That would be appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Karen Yankee, 104 Irwin Avenue, 3rd Precinct, and I have thank yous. I thought since I was here I would do this because we need to thank people more for the good things that they do. I would personally like to thank 3rd Precinct Councilperson Al Smith for creating and scheduling an open forum for his 3rd Precinct constituents to hear upcoming agenda items, public service announcements, and for 3rd Precinct citizens to voice their concerns, ask questions, and give their recommendations. He also invites people who have knowledge of upcoming council agenda items as well. And I'd like to thank County Commissioner Tompkins because he's been to our meetings and he's been very helpful. And I would also like to thank Kent Phillips, Acting Director of Public Works, for keeping us updated on the Irwin Avenue Improvement Project. When we had a problem with communication after it all started and we had a meeting and told them that we were concerned that we weren't being informed as to what was going on, that all changed. But the road better be done by July 1st. So we can have the Irwin Avenue yard sale. And we just had a meeting last Friday night, and Councilperson Smith, every time we've had a meeting, will send us, or anybody that's on his email agenda, a synopsis of what happened at the meeting. So we know what's happening, and I'm sure something that was talked about Friday night, Commissioner Tompkins is going to tell us about. And one thing he says repeatedly is, I am your representative and I vote for how you tell me. And so far, it's been true, and I find it very refreshing. Thank you very much. Never had this happen since I've lived there since 1974. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Marquetta Frost, and I live at 520 West Cass Street. That's Lynn Reed's precinct. Don't know the number, sorry. 2, thank you. I started to say 2, darn it. But first I just want to say thank you to the City Council for your support for the Martin Luther King Community Dinner. It was a tremendous turnout and very supported by this council and Gary Tompkins and other people from the community. And I especially want to thank Ms. Lynn Reed, who so graciously used her personal cooking skills and made sure everyone just had a delicious meal. She is a chef by her own right, and we truly appreciate what she does in the community for us, and the cultural things that she tries to make sure happens in this community is a wonderful thing and refreshing. thing for our community to continue to celebrate one another and make sure we know about one another's history. So thank you, Ms. Reed. Just to keep it short, I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew about the next upcoming event, which is Saturday. I know you guys are very busy, but I tried to make sure a flyer went to your mailboxes. But it's the Mental Health Fair, and that is Saturday, January 25th. It's at Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church, 1010 Chauncey Street. A lot of you have been there, including our mayor. Thank you. And other council members. And we want to make sure that it is free, open to the public, and we are going to have an awesome expert panel that deals with mental health issues from the public schools, Albion Department of Public Safety, City, Gary Tompkins is going to be there. Thank you very much. We have Summit Point and other people that will also be there representing different areas of how they are making laws and dealing with issues of mental health. It's time that we really start helping people. A lot of people have issues and they don't know where to go. And even if they did, they don't know how to access them. And so a lot of people take care of others that have mental health issues as well. So we want to make sure that people know we're not looking for those that have an issue. We're looking for those that have an issue, but also know of others that they can spread the word about different resources in our community and just push that it's okay to talk about mental health because it affects us all. So thank you very much, and hope to see some of you there.
What time?
Thank you. It will be from 1 till 4. The panel should be about 2:45, 3-ish till 4, so if your day is long, you can come around 3 o'clock and just spend an hour with us for the panel, and they'll be open for questions and things like that. Any other questions?
I believe
But there'll
every
be plenty-
council,
yeah, there'll be
each
plenty of
council
other-
member has a copy of the flyer in front of you there.
Yeah, there'll be information booths and things like that as well, but if you just have to pick a time, the panel would be the best time. But any time is great. All right? Thank you.
Sonia Brown, 713 Orchard Drive. I just wanted to note, and I wanted it to be publicly noted, that the email that I sent you all was more than just an announcement of a location change, and it specifically speaks about the Kids at Hope staff and the Albion Recreation Department staff developing a comprehensive recreation program development plan for the community to review. It goes on to say that this plan will allow the full use of the recreation renewal millage. So it was much more than just a relocation announcement. And for the record, Councilmember Williamson was on council in June of 2019. So he was not just citizen Shane Williamson at that time. I also want to urge council to be proactive in the proposed millage increase for Marshall Public Schools. I viewed the school board meeting, and I heard Dr. Davis's comments and discussion he had with his board members. For this current year, 2020, Albion taxpayers are looking to pay 0.4 for the millage. Under what Marshall's proposing, next year, that would increase to over 5 mills for us to address debt that we didn't help accumulate. So I don't know if you all even know what's going on with the potential millage, but I know Marshall is looking to possibly have this vote brought to the entire district, which includes the former original Marshall district and the old Albion school district. I would encourage you all to maybe schedule a meeting with the Marshall School Board, just to, as leaders of the city, to ask questions, get an understanding, and possibly take a position, because it will likely become a valid issue this year for our voters. And for those of us who oppose annexation, one of the concerns was our community being outnumbered by over 3,000 voters compared to Marshall's registered voters. So ask questions, be proactive, and lead this community to do what's fair. Thank you.
Garrett Brown, 1016 South Superior Street. Just wanted to echo that. The actual city council at the time took a position in opposition to annexation, and the voters passed it. But to kind of echo what she was saying, one of the benefits of local control, and whether it's a school district or a city, a municipality, is you control both policy amongst your voters, and you also control the tax rates to a certain extent. And that was the concern, because I don't know, obviously I can't check now because I don't know how to check that because the district's been annexed, but at the time, like she said, the registered voter base in Marshall was about 3,000 more voters. And so the concern was that something like this did happen, if everyone came out to vote, we'd be outvoted. And so what the proposal really is entailing is Albion, well, let me back up and saying this. I think what motivated a lot of people to support the annexation was the fear of the debt falling on them, the $3+ million. And so the state paid that because when you annex, you have two options. You could do an annexation, which is the district merging into another one, or there could have been a consolidation where both entities were legally dissolved and there was some new entity, new mascot, everything. And the reason why, my understanding reason why that a consolidation didn't take place was because there was a fear that the voter base in the original Marshall district would not support some of the same things that happened to Albion: loss of mascot, loss of the completely new school board, and then taking on our debt. So the state really kind of greased the mechanism of that happening by paying our debt. So now for voters here to be asked to pay debt that was not accumulated by Albion, the former Albion School District residents, I think that's a big concern, especially given the amount that it would go up by. And then as a suggestion, kind of tied to this in a way, I know last year, the year before, Councilmember Lawler, some of the council members were asking for kind of weekly reports from the mayor, because I know when you watch the school board video, there were some public comments from the mayor. And then I know that the last EDC meeting I went to, the mayor had some comments that seemed to be at odds with the consensus of the council when it came to rental registration. And so I think one of the things I'd ask the council to do is, because only the council can police colleagues and members, is to make sure that when the mayor is speaking at the school board meetings or EDC meetings, that policy positions are not being taken in opposition to what a consensus of the council has been, if the mayor is going to be the chief kind of political spokesman for the community. So that's something I'd ask council to monitor as well. Thank you.
Are there further public comments? If not, we'll welcome our county commissioner.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, council members, City Manager McCleary, Clerk Domingo, residents of the city of them here, and those that are watching this evening, good evening. Gary Tompkins, your county commissioner. Great to see you folks, as always, absolutely. I'll be really brief tonight because it's late, and I do know, and I have a tendency to talk too much, so I'll be real careful. I was at the Sheridan Township this evening, meeting this evening, before I came to the Albion City Council meeting, and Rep. Hodsman was there, and had an excellent opportunity to kind of talk more about my road plan that I've been talking about. And the reason why I bring this road plan up is because word is on the street, and you know how words are on the street, pretty reliable sources, that there will be a request to issue general obligation bonds to the tune of $60 billion over 20 years for road repairs. We do know that in itself will cost about $300 million a year just in interest alone. And we do know with that, that'll come with a price tag, either through a revenue enhancement, i.e. a tax increase. And again, the reason why I bring this up real quickly is because, again, and I conveyed this not only to Representative Bizon, or Senator Bizon on Friday morning, but also to Rep. Hadsma this evening, is it's just not the solution to the problem. You guys might have seen my newsletter. My newsletter laid out a number of items on the newsletter that stated some of the things that the legislators were putting on through bills in the House and the Senate. And quite frankly, it doesn't address the problem. It just continues to throw more money at the issue without really fixing the problem, which we all know is Act 51. So the reason why I bring this up is because IE1, this affects you significantly because of your Albion Street Bridge. And we talked about the Albion Street Bridge Friday morning. I conveyed to Senator Bizon the seriousness of that bridge in terms of it probably has maybe, if we're lucky, a year left on it at this point in time before it's closed down. Simply closed down and you have to reroute around it. And the problem is, from what I understand, the city of Albion applied for a grant for that bridge and was unsuccessful in the grant. So therefore, that grant cycle now will put you out to at least 2023. That bridge doesn't have an ability to get to 2023 without significant repairs. So what it leads me to believe is, again, this process that we're in, which is Act 51, just simply doesn't work. Because if you really truly looked at the seriousness of that bridge, and some of us have been underneath that bridge, it's bad shape. Hasn't been touched in over almost 50 years. It's in bad shape. Are we going to wait for the fact is maybe somebody will fall into it as they're driving over it? Heaven forbid that would happen. Or just the simple fact that you guys have many trucks that still go up and down that street as they go out to Anderson's so there's an economic aspect to it. Just bottom line is we know Act 51 doesn't work where it's at. 70 years, the roads, and a number of things in our bridges. So with that being said, I will tell you, for those folks watching here in the audience and you folks as well, if you've had an opportunity to call your representatives, the governor or the senator, continue doing it. I had a dialogue with Senator Bizon on Friday morning about it, learning about more information relative to my plan. Also tonight, Jim and I Hadsma also had a brief conversation. So we're starting to get some movement now, which is a good thing. Finally starting to get some movement to the process. So I would ask you to continue calling, continue asking the questions. Because at this point in time, we're going to continue down Act 51's route. We're going to be in the same situation we are 25 years from now. And that bridge will still be closed or in disrepair. So we have a decision to make. Either we stand with status quo or we continue to push the envelope. I will do and advocate in it, as I told Jim Hadsma this evening, our representative. Doesn't matter if the governor calls me tomorrow. This is not a partisan issue. This is simply a people issue. All of us drive on roads every day, and we're all impacted by those roads, whether it be through a tie rod being on your car or a tire going bad. We all feel it. It's time for us to act instead of just talk. So again, I would certainly appreciate your help and those watching this evening to continue to call the folks and push them to at least give me a discussion and an opportunity to really present the plan and move forward with what we have, because I think we have a real opportunity to change the conversation. So with that being said, it's always great to be with you folks each and every month. Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes.
I know you told us about the tax for people that had delinquent tax support and gave us the number.
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, if you have folks that have issues with either delinquent taxes or in a major issue with their taxes, have them contact the Treasurer's Office, Calhoun County Treasurer's Office. I can get you that number. I will get you that number. But again, the Treasurer's Office is really making an attempt to try to keep people in their homes, because that's what we should be doing, is doing whatever we can to keep people in homes and not letting things go to tax foreclosure. So I'll get that. Yes.
And the deadline is?
February 14th as well, absolutely.
So at the meeting, could you bring?
Oh, I certainly will. Yes, I will. I certainly will. And I'll also bring my cards for people to call as well. We're going to continue this effort. It really needs to be had. And I think we're starting to see some movement. Some people are starting to talk, which is a good thing. So with that being said, you guys have a great evening unless there's any other questions. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
sir.
it.
Okay. Next up is the city manager's report. We all have a copy of the written report here in front of us.
Your Honor, members of council, I provided you with an update on the recycling center agreement, which there is no update. I have not yet received anything from the county on the extension. I assume at this point, the county, because during our discussions, they indicated that they had no problem with extending out to March or beyond until we had a new rubbish collection contract in place. They may be just deciding that rather than go through the process of an addendum to the contract just to let it extend. But if I do receive something, it'll come to you.
Member Williams has a question.
Yep.
On the recycling center, okay, so they would like to not operate in Albion anymore. The county recycling center would like to not do that here.
Correct. They want
Are they closing all of their operations in other parts of the county?
No. Sorry, Shane. I apologize. I'm so sorry, man. To answer, Mr. McClary, you should be getting something from Jim Dyer, our attorney, relatively quickly on it. I spoke to Jen Bamba this afternoon, about that specific issue. There are a number of issues of why there has been a decision to move away from that. The site itself is a contaminated site, and when that slab was poured, there was not a vapor section that was actually put underneath that. Please forgive me, I'm not the expert in it. I'm just communicating the information. And with that being said, it causes an issue because one of the issues that the county's really concerned with is safety and, first aid and the safety of our people that are there. And currently right now, with the way that is set up, there's no availability to put a severe weather shelter there. Either be a restroom or a severe weather shelter there. It just isn't a feasible area to do so. My other understanding is, and again, I'm hearing this from Jen Bamba, who's our community development director. The indication is that when we have people there, they're not allowed to use the restroom at the fire station, that they have to actually go to the train station to have the restroom. So by far, they're having to close the site down and walk over and then walk back. So there was a number of items that were actually issues that they had regarding that. There are some potential opportunities coming forth in the near future to address the situation. And before I speak too much on it, I will be able to get you more information, but it's kind of preliminary at this point in time. But there were a number of issues that were included in that whole deal. And I know Jen had talked to you specifically about that recycling center. So I don't think necessarily that the recycling center is going to move away. It will move away in its current status. Oh, the other issue, if I may, the other issue that was brought up was the small building, the brick building that's across the street. Okay, that's where they house a lot of the storage. From what I understand, there's a hole in the roof where there's some significant fall down, and I believe the Albion Building Authority owns that building. And again, this is just coming from the conversation I had, is that they're not going to fix that roof, which creates a problem for, again, housing that storage, those items in the storage area. So, but again,
I'm not sure what the detail of information has come to you. This is the first I've heard that, geez, we're going to lose our recycling center because people can't go to the restroom, and the city's going, not in my firehouse. And that we got a building that's owned by the building authority, and they've said, tough, we're not gonna fix the roof. First I've heard of this.
that was the information I just got this afternoon.
Okay.
Because again, as a matter of fact, interesting enough, at the Precinct 3 meeting, that was brought up as a question. Because apparently it had gotten out there rumor-wise, so before I spoke at the Precinct 3 meeting, I wanted to make sure I had all the details, and that's why I contacted Jen Bamba, who is our community development director, to make sure I had an understanding, because again, I wouldn't want to put anything out there that isn't accurate or
So that was an excellent question by Councilmember Williamson. So they're all closing across the county? No, just in Albion.
Right, but there are conditions of reasons why. There wasn't just simply a decision to say, we don't think it's important. Without getting into too much detail, I think it's kind of Mr. McClary's answer relative to the single hauler situation and your recycling thing, I believe that you're considering or maybe consider in the future. So I don't want to get into the middle of it. I don't want to create a problem. I just want to make sure that you guys have the information that I have. Now, granted, it is a month-to-month contract. It'll be extended through March, certainly until the deadline there. But I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of those were the situations that had, go to the bathroom, and I think there were some other records that, confidential information that didn't allow them to use the fire station for whatever reason.
Councilman Williamson?
Have you advocated on behalf of Albion to keep that recycling center in some form here? Have you? I'm just asking because like this is news to me this week, and I'm pretty shaken up and a little mad about this. Like we're just gonna close something down in Albion and say forget it. So I'm just wondering where you're going to be at on the forefront, making sure that we can still have a recycling center here. If Marshall, if Homer, if Battle Creek, or wherever else the county is that can have it, I absolutely think that the citizens of Albion deserve it.
Absolutely, hence the reason when it brought to my attention on Friday, I didn't respond to it when Councilmember Smith looked at me, and I said, oh, wait a minute, I gotta go figure out what's going on. So it was much ado about me finding out about it too as well. So again, now that I've got the information displaced, now I've gotta go into, to certainly advocate, because I don't want Albion not to have recycling facilities or availability to that.
Is there a bathroom in the building across that's got the hole in the roof?
No. My understanding is they go to the train station and actually go to the restroom. That's where they're.
Because I got a call from a lady.
No, your question,
talking about-
Shane's correct. I mean, absolutely.
It was a valid question.
Yeah, absolutely.
My understanding was that the county was possibly looking at another site just outside of Albion, maybe in one of the townships, but they didn't think that was a good option.
It wasn't communicated to me.
So, but these are discussions we have to.
Yeah, there's discussions, and please understand, I will certainly advocate it out for Albion as I always do. But I just found this information out myself, so I had to find it out from Friday night to today. So I'm trying to ingest all the information and try to figure out where we go from here at this point in time. I will keep you up to date as I find out anything more, but again, I wanted to make sure you had the latest information, so, at this point, so, yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So, sorry about that.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
I noted for you that we are looking at a website redesign this year. Under our contract with Revise, we are scheduled for a website redesign at no additional cost to the city, so staff will be working on that. I met with MDOT to discuss the North Clark Street Michigan Transportation Economic Development Fund Category A grant that was awarded to the city for North Clark Street. That's a $340,000 grant, and the project total, I think, is $650,000. We went over the administrative requirements for the grant. We had requested that if we move forward with this grant project, we wanted it to be a direct grant so that it could be administered locally. And so we have to actually apply for a direct grant. That application will be coming back to you shortly for discussion and consideration for approval. I am meeting later this week with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources Fisheries Division to talk about the settlement funding that's available for the Kalamazoo River. We will be talking about different options for the city of Albion to receive grant funding, whether it's to study dam removal and actual removal of the dam, or repairs to the retaining walls that we have, or other funding opportunities. And I will keep council apprised of those discussions. I provided you with an update on the staffing situation. We are moving forward with a number of recruitments. We have already made a decision to promote one of our existing staff members in the finance department from general accountant to the income tax accounting position, and we will be moving forward with several other recruitments. We met with the engineers last week on the final SAW grant sanitary sewer asset management report and plan. We are reviewing those documents. It is quite a comprehensive plan, and we will be working to incorporate the findings from that plan and the recommended improvements into the overall capital improvement plan for discussion by council later this year as we work on the comprehensive CIP. I noted for you that our information technology contract with IT Right is expiring in the next few months. I will be recommending to the council that we piggyback on another city's competitive bid process, and continue with a new contract with IT Right. They have over 400 municipal clients. I don't think we're going to find better services, but there is a substantial increase in the cost of services because we are moving toward more comprehensive cybersecurity measures as well as network standardization. So we have to invest more in our IT services. And I will be presenting more information on that to the City Council. I am starting extended office hours for my office on Thursdays from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock p.m. so that people have additional opportunity to meet with me after hours to talk about citizen or business or organization concerns. So I look forward to that. So every Thursday from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock p.m. I will be having extended manager office hours by appointment. The reason we need to do it by appointment is to make sure that people aren't anticipating meeting with me and we've got the entire time allotted to others. So I want to make sure that we can accommodate everybody. If people are interested in meeting with me after hours on Thursdays, they can contact my office by calling me, leaving a voicemail message. My number is 629-7172, or they can email me at dmccleary@cityofelbionmi.gov, and I'd be happy to set up an appointment with them. And then I provided a list for council of the upcoming items that you can expect on council agendas. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay. Comments by council members? Councilwoman Clark.
Just want everybody to know that I am having a council meeting the precinct meeting on the 30th, and I will be having a representation from Neighborhood Inc. for people that have low income to moderate income that may need housing improvement or either looking to buy a home. And she will have detailed information to share of how you apply and how you qualify. So I'm opening it up to anyone who would like to attend.
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. I just want to reach out, make the announcement that if there's anyone in Precinct 5 that is interested in serving on the Sidewalk Advisory Committee, to please contact me. Thank you.
Comments by other council members? Okay. Just a few quick ones. Want to thank everybody for showing up, making public statements. We really do pay attention to that. It makes a difference. Let's see here. I did want to mention to my colleagues and the rest of the community that we have an Albion College student who's interning, and he's focusing on public affairs, starting to talk to staff. He'll want to get with every one of the council members on a regular basis and putting out a newsletter, communicating what's going on, those sorts of things. So his first name is Jim, and his last name, I can't pronounce it, so. So look, he's met with several people so far. He's accumulating, he's going to start drafting a newsletter. That'll go out about monthly, and then some spotlight things on individual employees, individual projects on the city's website. So again, look for that, and it's an effort to increase the flow of information out to our community and keep people apprised of what's going on. So, any other comments? Okay. We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to excuse absent council members.
Everybody was here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
It's okay. But, no, I
Motion to
understand.
adjourn.
It's been moved and supported to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
He does have a very odd last name.
Yeah,
When you said it the other day,